My name's Kevin Watt. I'm a Pediatric Critical Care Fellow, and I am the lead investigator in the Obesity Informatics database for the Pediatric Trials Network. Everybody knows that obesity is a big problem in this country, and kids in particular have been hit hard. 1 out of every 5 children in this country is overweight or obese, and most of these kids have a higher risk of diseases and are often exposed to more medicines than their lean counterparts, the other kids who are not obese. There's reason to believe that drugs may behave differently in children who are obese, that drug levels in the body might be different based on a child's body composition, based on how an obese child might metabolize a drug differently. And for that reason, we don't know if the doses we're using are safe or are effective. The goal of this project is to figure out which drugs would require dosing modifications so that when a physician prescribes a drug to a child, that physician knows that the dose is both safe and effective. In order to understand how drugs behave differently in obese children compared to children who are not obese, we first have to identify what we know and what we don't know. There have been a number of researchers who thought about this question early on and have looked at how drugs behave differently in children who are obese. They would give drugs to these children and then measure the drug levels and compare those levels to children who are not obese. So the first part of this project is to scour the medical literature to see what studies have been done to assemble all the information that we know at this point. And our team has been looking through a number of medical databases and thus far has identified about 20 drugs that have actually been studied specifically in obese children. Unfortunately, many of these drugs are not drugs that would be commonly used in obese children, and so what this part of the study has really highlighted for us is the enormous gaps in the database. Where do we go next? Well, we have 20 or so drugs for which there is some information, but they're not the drugs that we really want to know about. And so the first thing we need to do is prioritize the drugs we want to study. And for this project, we're going to focus on acute care drugs. So these are drugs that would be used for critically ill children in an emergency. A child that comes into the emergency room who's not breathing or doesn't have a heart rate. We know that there have not been many studies of these drugs specifically in obese children, so now we have to look other places. One of the places that we'll look is the adult literature to look and see if anyone's done studies in obese adults for these medicines. And the other is to to expand our search to other studies in children, not specifically obese children, to see if perhaps obese children were included in those studies. The ultimate goal of this project is to develop a user-friendly drug database that has dosing recommendations for different drugs used in obese children. We envision either a web-based tool or perhaps a smartphone-based tool where a pediatrician or an emergency room doctor could easily pull up this tool, look at the drug, and determine what's the best dosing in an obese child.